Isha Parupudi is a Bharatanatyam and Kuchipudi dancer from Houston, Texas, and a student of Dr. Ratna Kumar. She has been dancing since the age of 8 and has performed across the United States and abroad. In 2018, she performed for the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's keynote speech at the World Government Summit in Dubai. Over the years, she has also performed at the United Nations, Jacob's Pillow, and Erasing Borders. Isha is honored to have been named a 2019 Young Arts finalist and U.S. Presidential Scholar in the Arts. She was also a 2018 Texas Young Master and was awarded a grant by the Texas Commission on the Arts and Texas First Lady Cecilia Abbott. Through this grant, she was able to study with world renowned dancers Srimati Bala Kondalrao and Srimati Rama Vaidyanathan in India. Isha also accompanied Rama Vaidyanathan on her US and France tour of her acclaimed production Vivartana. Isha attends Columbia University in New York studying neuroscience while continuing to pursue dance. Thank you so much for being a part of this year's online Mahotsavam for ICAPS. We're so glad to have you and very excited. So tell me about your artistic journey.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be a part of it. This virtual Mahotsavam, I think the artists that have been invited so far have been so inspiring. And yeah, it's such an honor to be here. My artistic journey started actually kind of late. I think I was 10 when I started learning, if that's considered late. But I started learning from Guru Ratna Kumar from Houston, Texas. I actually started off with Bharatanatyam, and after I completed my Arangacham, she wanted to teach me Kuchipudi. And so that was actually not my decision in the beginning, but after a few years, I kind of grew to love it. So now I pursue both as much as I can. And um, dance in school has always been a balance issue, of course, but I'm trying to dedicate as much time to dance as possible. That's my main goal.
So talk to me a little bit about obviously I think many of us have seen you on Indian Raga and other platforms like that. Talk to me a little bit about both what made you kind of pursue those things and how has that has that changed what you want to do, or has that fed into like just kind of where that's led you and what place you're in right now?
Sure. Um, so I think when anyone starts off learning a new skill, it's very much monkey see, monkey do type of situation. I would dance exactly like my guru, do exactly what she told me, and there wasn't very much room for, I guess, a creative outlet. Um, and I think midway through high school, being a part of organizations like Indian Raga, as you mentioned, as well as Young Arts, which is another really popular arts organization for youth in high school. Those organizations really allowed me to explore different avenues of my dance form and understand that, oh, I too can maybe add something, however little or much that may be. So that's really when I got into choreographing and kind of stepping outside of the box a little bit, maybe choreographing items on, for example, mental health and empowerment and topics that usually aren't covered in our traditional repertoire. And I think that was when I really started finding my voice as a dancer, as well as expressing my creativity through art as I hadn't done before. And I think that really was what pushed me to keep pursuing dance, because for me, I think it's kind of redundant to keep dancing the same pieces without experimenting and trying to innovate. And that really pushed me to keep pursuing it past high school. And I'm in no way even close to done learning about choreography and technique and all of those things. I think it's a constant learning process, But I'm so grateful to have those organizations that have pushed me to keep developing and keep learning and trying to innovate and all of those things. So now I'm in college, and as I said, balance is key in that respect, because dance does take up a lot of time. But I'd say right now where I am in my artistic journey is just trying to learn and perform as much as I can, and just see what happens, basically.
How did you figure out, or, kind of go out there to apply for, young arts, Indian Raga, anything else that you've pursued? Because one thing I'll tell you, one thing I've heard, we'll see, students who are in high school passionate about dance and really working on it, and then, I've heard, oh, but that's so scary, that's so intimidating, to even put the attempt. So I'm kind of curious of how you navigated that.
Um, Google was my best friend, honestly. Like, this was literally just me typing into Google Indian dance opportunities. That's how I found a lot of the things that I applied for. And some things my guru would also suggest to me, that, hey, maybe you should apply for this. And her mindset was always, apply, you're not losing anything. It wasn't that if I was good or if I was bad or if I was ready or anything like that. And I think that rubbed off on me a little bit, especially for young art, since it is a competitive program. I was definitely nervous about applying, but it actually took me 2 years to actually become a finalist. I had applied for 3 years in a row, and it was definitely not on the first shot. So I think that's the main thing to learn, is that applying doesn't hurt at all. Like, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So applying is the key. Even if you get it, if you don't get it, or if you get it, it doesn't really matter in the end. The point is that you tried. So that was the mindset that I tried to keep, and not being dejected by failure, because failure is inevitable. So yeah, that was basically it.
So, as you were going into college, how did you kind of figure out where dance fits in and how it fits in? And was it one driving the other, or you had, how did you kind of work through all of that? And has that kind of evolved since you started school?
Yeah, definitely. It actually started off in the selection process itself. I wanted to live in New York. That was my dream, because that's where a lot of the performance opportunities were. It was full of dancers who were passionate, and I just really wanted to be part of that arts community. Um, and the first year I was here, that was great. I performed at Erasing Borders with a couple of my friends, which was really great. I was a part of a dance production that my friend was a creative director on. So it was like, oh my God, it's actually happening. I'm in New York, I'm dancing. But obviously this year that's not the case anymore. But I think moving to such a creative city for college really pushed me to be artistic, even if I didn't have time for it. Um, Being pre-med especially, I didn't leave the library most of the time during finals week, but then in on the weekends and during breaks, I would be out there dancing, because it's so accessible as well, because the city's not actually very big, I suppose. I mean, it's population density wise it is, but it's not hard to get around to places and see performances and be a part of the community if you want to. So I think that's what made my college experience so closely tied to dance, because I live in a city where that's possible, and I'm so grateful for that.
What advice would you have for kids that are in high school trying to figure out what place they want to have for dance in their life?
Mm-hmm. Um, I would definitely say figure out what dance means to you first. That's so vague, but I think that's where I started out, because for me personally, dance was a creative outlet that I didn't have in school. So that it filled in those holes that my academic life wasn't fulfilling for me. So dance was my creative outlet, it was my stress relief, it was all of that combined in one. So I guess instead of watching TV, I'd go dance. Like it's just, you have 24 hours in the day. You just need to take something out and put something in. Oftentimes academics aren't flexible. Like you need to give a certain amount of time for that. But the other hours in your day, I think if you decide where to put those things and make dance one of your top priorities, then that should be doable.
What about, and I asked this because you mentioned you're in pre-med. What about if parents are worried about dance taking away from academics? What has your experience been in that regard?
My parents are amazing. They're very supportive, but sometimes they do get worried that maybe I'm spending too much time on dance. But sometimes they also get worried that I'm spending too little time. They're like, "Go practice. Have you practiced today?" But I think the most important thing for parents to think about is, I guess, their kids' happiness. I don't know. I know all parents think about that automatically, but I think what my parents did a good job at was realizing that maybe if I don't spend this hour studying for my test and I dance instead, I'll be in a better mindset to take my test. Like it's not black and white. Like academics don't need to, this sounds awful, but they don't need to be top priority all the time. Mental health is also a huge priority, and often artistic excellence feeds that more than academics do. So I think for parents especially, it's important to understand that artistic ventures are as important as academic ones.
Yep, I 100% agree with you. And it's a constant thing that I try to tell any students, any parents that I come across who are about to cross over to higher studies. I'm like, you don't have to give it up. In fact, it might help you. So yes.
Absolutely.
Well, tell us about what you have planned for your ICAPS performance.
Okay, I'm very excited to be performing Ayamagua, which is a Padavarnam, choreographed by Guru Ganpati Satyam. It's basically a Varnam about this girl who's distraught that there's rumors being spread about her. So that's kind of the premise of the Varnam. Sorry, the Varnam. She's heartbroken, and it's just such a beautiful piece. I absolutely fell in love with the Jatis. That's my guru's favorite part of the Varnam too. She was like, "You have to learn this Varnam just for the Jatis. It's so beautiful." So I'm very excited to perform that. And then I'm also performing a Garuda Dwani Tilana composed by Amba Krishna and choreographed by my guru, Dr. Ratna Kumar. And it's a very bright piece, very unique. The beats are just so joyful and perfect for Tilana, which is supposed to be joyful. It's about Shiva, and yeah, I'm very excited to be performing those pieces.
The Tilana, which style is it in? The Varnam is in Kuchipudi, right?
Yes, both are in Kuchipudi.
Both are in Kuchipudi. How did you, and you can answer specific to this this set or in a more general way, but how do you decide what pieces you want to perform for any opportunity?
I think the number one thing is the time that I have, because there have been performances where I'm asked to do a 3-minute piece, which is impossible to do, but we make do. And then there's performances where it's like an hour and a half. So I usually just in my current repertoire, as in like the pieces that like I currently have a grip on that I'm able to perform, I just tend to pick my favorite ones and try to fit it in that time frame, whatever that may be. I usually put the more exciting, energetic one towards the end. And if there's time, I like to start with the Ganesha piece and end with the Tilana, but that's obviously not possible always. And And of course, having a balance between nritta and abhinaya, I think, is also important to show the full scope of the art form. Yeah, I think that's the main criteria.
What about when you're trying to figure out if you want to pick a piece from the existing repertoire or if you want to take it into a more creative direction? How do you kind of navigate that?
Mm-hmm. Usually what I do with that is start off with a more traditional piece so as not to quote unquote like scare away people who might be kind of opposed to having a more out of the box thing coming their way. And then I sandwich those pieces in between more traditional pieces. And when I perform solo, I usually only been performing my guru's choreography, but for example, with Indian raga performances and those kinds of things, that's generally what we tend to do.
And what's your process when you are working on a choreography that you're putting together or you're collaborating with someone, as opposed to a piece that you've learned from your guru?
Mm-hmm. My process is generally mapping out what I want to say with the piece, because oftentimes when stepping out of the box, the message can kind of get lost in translation. So I kind of concretely map out exactly what I want this piece to convey and try to kind of narrow the focus so it's not too vague of a message. Because I think it's easier to choreograph something that leaves room for interpretation but isn't vague in what it's trying to say. So then I usually kind of go off of that roadmap and structure my piece to follow that message in the best way possible. So that's usually the route I take.
What other projects do you have going on that you want to share with us in addition to the ICAPS performance? I know these are strange times for artists everywhere, and I think it's always very cool to hear what everyone's up to and how they're working through this, the pandemic, and what the challenges it's brought.
Yes, thank you for asking. I recently performed for Battery Dance TV, which was really exciting. I think it's still up on their YouTube channel if anyone wants to check it out, but that was really awesome. I'm performing for a festival organized by Srimati Aruna Mohanty, which is called Uday Raga. I don't have a date for that yet, but that's coming up, which is exciting. And then my guru is the artistic director for Samskriti Performing Arts of Houston, and I'm collaborating with a few local musicians from Houston, and we're doing kind of this creative collage of pieces centered around inequality in not only in Indian cultures but in American cultures, and kind of exploring that whole narrative with pieces from different parts of India, which is I think will be interesting. That's still a work in progress, but
Awesome.
yeah, I'm very excited about those things.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so excited to have you as part of our series and for your performance, which will be going up next Saturday at 10 a.m. Eastern. And keep doing what you're doing. Best of luck.
Thank you so much. Thank you.